morning, everyone, and welcome to the April meeting of the Mountain View Computer Users Group. I'm John Buno, the president, in case of anybody who doesn't know me. And we're going to be getting started right now. Today's agenda is MVCUG Business, which I'm going to try and make very fast. Timely tech topics, which is going to be very interesting. Tips of the month and sharing favorites. And we got some really good ones. And the Computer Lexicon term of the month, which is going to be rather extensive this month because we have a lot of different things to talk about, and you need to know what they are. After that, services you need to know about with a very special presentation by Barry's wife, Lucinda, on podcasting. She is a podcaster, so we're going to have a live podcaster to sit and drill about podcasting. Okay, well, I've got enough questions to keep you going for 6-7 hours. We do have Wi-Fi available. It's the college user. There is no password for it anymore. All you have to do is agree to the terms. We do have a sponsorship program. It's $10 a month. You get a slide during the meeting, posted the video on the web. If you're looking for a great gift for people, her candles are amazing. They really are. We have another sponsor this month, Lucinda's Story Power. Great podcast. I strongly urge all of you to download it and listen to it. You've got how many episodes now? A lot.
This Wednesday will be 72.
72 episodes. What I would do is start with the latest one and go backwards rather than going all the way to the beginning and coming forward because they are very interesting. She also has a Patreon page. For those of you who don't know what Patreon is, we'll talk about that during her podcasting presentation. Sponsorship for me this month. I have closed down my photo business. Yes. I decided that enough is enough. I'm retiring. I need it. So let's see if these glasses. Yes. Oh, they're much better. Okay, let's talk about it. User group business. The officers, me, Mike is over here. Barry, who keeps swearing he's going to give me an updated picture. Which one's out of date? Okay, Mike, I need a new picture. Carolyn, our treasurer, who also has a treasurer's report, hopefully.
We have $530.34 in checking and $825.56 in savings. Oh no, wait, and $925.67 in savings. Yeah.
I owe you $25 for Marion. I don't know if I have it with me today. Yes, I do. I did put it in my wallet. Okay. I have 20 of it. Thought I had the 5 in there. So there's 20 of it. I owe you 5, but she's paid up. Okay. And then we have a webmaster, Jim Emmons, who probably none of you have ever met except Mike, Carolyn, and Barry. What? Oh, Mike, that's right. He did show up at a meeting. I have no idea. He's got some very serious hip problems. He's going to be going in for surgery soon, and his mobility is greatly limited. Plus, he's a recluse. But he does exist. He does take care of our web and does a very good job on that. Some of the service, we do have our website, which Jim May is saying. A great place to go up and find information about what's coming up. Good tips and tricks and links. Jim keeps it very much up to date. We also have our Facebook site where you can also find the YouTube videos posted there most of the time. In addition to our online resources, we have hardware checkouts. We have the film slide scanner and the projector, which works great for projecting video. When my daughter was visiting us this last in March, she actually set it up in our patio using a sheet, a white sheet as the screen, and she and her friends sat there and watched movies till 4 o'clock in the morning. So it does work. We also have professional consultation discounts. These are the phone numbers, Barry and I. If I don't answer, leave a message. Our rates are extremely reasonable. We charge $35. If we have to come out to your location, it's $35 an hour. Generally speaking, if we over the phone or Zoom sessions, generally there's no charge unless it becomes very convoluted. It takes us a long time. As opposed to going down to Geek Squad, for them to come out is $250 an hour now. I think that's what they're up to. Okay, membership is $25 per household. In September through August. Pay annual dues to the treasurer, that's Carolyn. You can do it either cash, check, money order, Yap Island Stone money, Chinese yuan, and we'll take anything. There's her mailing address, and also you can pay via PayPal. So, and I forgot to update this. Okay, that was March, April, but we're coming to, there we go. In May, we have password management. June, we have the digital camera. Now, June and July are two very special presentations. I'm going to be covering the whole concept behind digital cameras and what all the advanced features on your phone and digital camera do, such as f-stop, ISO, shutter speeds, how you do that on your phone. If you have Lightroom on your phone, how to use Lightroom's camera features. It is a presentation I've given numerous times. It's going to be for this group, so I'm going to tailor it. But all the things about, can I use my iPhone as my main camera, or do I need to go out and buy a digital camera? I can answer that very easily. I do. When I go on vacation now, all I carry is my iPhone. I do all my video, all my stills with the iPhone. I don't carry a camera anymore. Now, one of the reasons I can do that is I do have the 14, and I would not suggest attempting that with anything less than an iPhone 12 or the equivalent of the Samsung, because the cameras in those are excellent. Especially the 14 is amazing, especially for doing video. I can literally, with my limp, I can walk holding my phone like this, taking video, and the ending video is fully stabilized. You cannot tell that I'm walking with it.
This is what I got to play with.
What'd you get?
I finally upgraded. My battery died on my old phone.
Oh, so you have the 14 now? What do you think of it?
It's fun. It's good.
Have you played with the camera yet?
Somewhat, yeah. It's takes some excellent pictures.
The micro capability. I have better micro for close-up photography on my phone than I do on my camera. So that presentation is coming up, and the first one's going to be on the camera, the second one's going to be on editing. Many of you do not realize that on the iPhone, Photos editor is very sophisticated if you know how to use it. If you don't understand what all that junk is, then it's useless to you. And we will go through every single feature in Photos, because the same features exist in almost every other good photo editor. And then in August, this one, we don't know what's going to happen, okay? It's set up as a future arrived. We are expecting some very big announcements this year, maybe. And we'll talk more about that when we get to Time of Tech Topics. And then September is your chance to say what you want to do for the next year. We come in, we get together, and you propose topics. All the topics you see for this last year were proposed by the members, not the executive committee, but the members. Hey, I want to know more about X. And so then we go out and research X, and you get your presentation on it. That's where the ones on photography came from. That's one on today. People want to know more about it. So, moving right along. This month, we've had some really interesting announcements. Apple announced the Worldwide Developers Conference for June. Big surprise there is they haven't said anything about it, other than the fact it's going to happen. Normally, we get some advance. This year, they've been extremely quiet. The big rumor that is floating all over the net, all over the news media, is whether they are going to finally introduce their VR headset. You've got two camps out there. One camp says, yes, absolutely, they're finally going to do it, and legitimize VR. VR is virtual reality. There's like Facebook Metaverse has one that allows you to enter a virtual world and an augmented world, and we've talked about this at other meetings. Apple's one is supposed to be phenomenal, we think. No one knows for sure. There's another camp saying, oh, no, they've delayed it another year because it's not working. We shall see. iOS 16.4 has been introduced. For those of you who have iPhones that support iOS 16, please download 4. It's got some very critical fixes in it, a couple of security issues. Very first, the Mike. Mike first.
Okay. I just came across a article that says that Apple just issued emergency patches for spyware style 0 days. They just issued this today. I just checked on my phone, and 16.4.1 is now available for download.
Well, I was going to say,
I had a feeling you found that too.
I think it also addresses a battery drain issue with certain model of iPhones that came with 16.4.
Yes. Now, there's another rumor going around right now that pops up about every 4 or 5 years, and that is Apple and Disney. Since Steve Jobs was a big fan of Disney, and Pixar and Disney and Steve Jobs, and then Apple and Pixar and Disney, at one time, if Steve Jobs had not died, there would have been a merger, buyout, combination. Well, that is going again because Disney has got something Apple needs and Apple has something that Disney needs. My particular thoughts is I don't think the SEC will allow it because it would make too powerful of a media organization to where they could dominate the industry, because that would put Apple Plus and Disney Plus together and no one could compete with that. Absolutely no one. Now, Apple is putting $17 billion into to Apple Plus this year. Disney is putting in $11 billion into Disney Plus with new programming. That's a lot of money. Now, for Apple, that's a drop in the bucket. I mean, Apple's got so much cash, they don't know what to do with it. For Disney, thanks to Chapek, they're running some, and I'll discuss that offline if you want more information on that. I know a lot about this one. So that's what the rumors that are going on right now. Do you have any, boy, this is sensitive. Any questions about anything we've talked about? Discussions on the timely tech topics? Oh, sir, yes. A question. Fantastic.
We just, this is an old iPhone, and I am loath to get deeper into, you know the story.
Yeah.
Some of those people, probably like your webmaster, that maybe more out there. And I was really excited about the prospects coming up with the photo stuff. Will some of the information that you will be using with the more sophisticated current versions of the phone be things that will be helpful to me and my...
The only thing that will not be applicable on your phone, and I'm not even sure I'm even going to discuss it, is a micro capability. Everything else is universal except the micro. And that's only on, I think, 13 and 14. I don't think 12. No, 12 definitely does not have it. 13 and 14 have the micro capability. Everything else I'll be talking about, the panel capability, the video capability, still capability, oh, and portrait. You do not have portrait that we do have. Other than that, it's the same. And when we come to us, I'll say specifically, this is only available on these model iPhone. If you don't hear that come out of my voice, that means you should be able to do it. Unless I forget, then Barry will correct me. Okay, any other? Yes.
I do want to piggyback on that in regards to the operating system upgrade. However, if you have an older phone that doesn't support 16, iOS 16, double check your software updates anyway, because when there's a critical security issue, Apple will also upgrade older versions of iOS if that security exists on the older, the vulnerability exists on the older operating system.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, very good point, Barry. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Someone mentioned that there's already a patch for 16.4.1. Where did you see that?
No, it's 16.4.1 is the patch.
When I do my tip, I was going to address where you look for those updates on
I said that 16.4.1 every
Yeah.
next morning.
Okay, now we've got some tips and favorites. We have a video on multiple file background. This is a feature only available on the iPhone. As far as I know, it's available on all iPhones, and it's a way to take images and delete the backgrounds on multiple files at one time. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at how to bulk remove the background in iOS. Now, first, what we're going to do is go to Files and open that application. And if you haven't used that one before, it basically gives you a finder on the iPhone. Then we're going to go and select the photos. You click the three little dots in the upper right-hand corner, and that brings up a selection where you can go and select the photographs you want to work with. Click in the little circle, and you'll see the blue arrow come up of each of the photographs you want to remove the background from. Then click the three little dots in the lower right-hand corner, and you'll see a menu pop up. From this menu, select the Remove Background option, and wait for the magic to happen. In just a few seconds, you will see a number of new files showing you the background has been removed, just like magic. And it's that simple. In Numbers, there is an option. It says Copy and Copy Snapshot. And let me go up, and you can select a table, and then over here you have Copy and Copy Snapshot. Now, the difference between the two, Copy copies the table intact. Snapshot copies what you see on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a copy of this table, come over into create a new note, and I'm going to paste it. And then I'm going to come back to Numbers and do a copy snapshot, paste it down there. You see the difference? The top one, the hidden column is shown. In snapshot, it's not. That's the difference between the two.
Is it still an active table?
No, unfortunately. Oh, yeah, I can change it, but no formulas.
So even a direct copy doesn't copy the formulas, just
Nope, not in the notes at least.
not into notes.
Yes. And pages, it might, I don't remember. I haven't done that yet.
You paste it into another numbers
Yes.
document,
Yes, it will.
copy the formula.
Okay, but so if you're trying to do, a table for display, use copy snapshot. If you're copying within numbers, you use copy. Okay, so let's go. Any questions on that?
So essentially, it's a screenshot, number 4.
No, because a table is, see, I can go in and add to this table.
Oh, okay, got it.
It's not a screenshot. It's a snapshot of the table as it's displayed. Now, this becomes critical when you have pie charts or charts in your numbers and you want to put those in another document. A straight copy, you won't get the tables correctly. Copy snapshot, you will. Now, what we're going to do is Barry's got a presentation.
What's happening?
Magic.
It's called AirPlay.
Oh,
Barry, Barry has to control it.
Yes. Okay, Barry, it's all
You
yours.
can't
Go for
control it. Okay, this is in regards to, I'm sure everybody has seen, they're watching a film, a TV show, or something like that, and you get the disclaimer at the beginning says, the content of this show contains flashing lights and bright, something along those lines. And it's a warning for, specifically for people with photosensitivity, epilepsy, or other people that have other, like motion sickness or something that might be triggered by bright flashing lights and so forth. What?
It was going to go to sleep.
She woke up.
Anyway, so it's advising if you have that kind of sensitivity to be careful when you're watching this content. Well, in this very latest version of iOS, iPad OS, TV OS, all on 16.4, and macOS Ventura 13.3, Apple has added a new feature that will automatically dim that kind of content when it senses it or in the program. So it's just a setting that you can turn on and off. So you want to open the Settings app. I'll just go back here to my home screen. In the dock down there, the Settings app on iOS is the little gray gearbox thingy there. And I got a number 1 because I haven't, as Mike was pointing out, we have a 16.4.1 that was pushed out this morning, emergency. I haven't done it yet. I didn't see it until we were getting ready to leave to come here. So hopefully nobody's lurking on the college network to install malware on my computer.
Nope.
Anyway, so once you're in iOS or iPad OS, in the Settings app, you want to go to Accessibility. And under Accessibility, in the top section under Vision, there's an item called Motion. And under Motion, you'll find a new toggle, Dim Flashing Lights. And if you turn that on, and then when you play content, and I believe it's beyond just the Apple TV app. I think it's any video content on any app, because the algorithm is looking at the content as it's being played. It's not, I don't think it's any metadata that's coming with the content. But the software on your device, your operating system software, when it detects those bright flashing light content sections, it will dim the screen automatically. So it's the same thing on your phone, in Settings, Accessibility, and Motion. On the Apple TV, I didn't go look at it specifically, but there's a Settings app if you have an Apple TV, and it will also have either Motion
or it might be under display, because in macOS Ventura 13.3, you go to System Settings and you go to Display instead of Accessibility. Or maybe it's Accessibility Display instead of Vision. Anyway, you might have to hunt around. You can also do a search in Settings. If you pull down on the sidebar, you can type in the search field, Dim, and you'll come up with it, and it'll take you right there. So, I also said I would address where to find your operating system version that you're at and whether you need an update or not. In the Settings app, you'll notice that that badge that I have, come on, what happened here? There we go. The badge that I have is giving me a signal because I have an update available. But if you don't have one that's been pushed out to you, you go to the General Settings and then Software Update, and it will ping Apple's server, and if there is an update that applies to your device, no matter what version of the operating system that you are running, it'll come up here. If you don't have one available, it just says your device is up to date. So that's how you check for your updates. Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much, Barry.
You're welcome.
You want to give me control back? Let me get this going again. Okay, Mike, do you have anything for Windows?
Not much. Windows 11 had a lot of things put out last month, so they haven't done really anything that I'm aware of this month. The only thing I heard was yesterday that the Windows 10 expiration date is March of 2025, and from the next 2 years, they will not be putting out any more new capabilities for Windows 10. Updates will be security updates only. So they won't be modifying Windows 10 from here on in. That's the only thing I've heard. Otherwise, Windows 11, they don't really make any announcements. They just push things out. They're kind of like gambling the ball like bunnies, just not doing much of anything. So, but I haven't heard there was anything that came up.
How are you finding Windows 11?
Let's put it this way. This is my Windows 10 laptop. Every week, Carol has Windows 11 here. Every week she complains to me about it.
They've changed, like I said, say you want to connect to a network like I used to have to check. You used to could hit the little globe guy and then hit the network. Now you got to hit the globe guy, you got to go to the network, you got to go to this other thing, and then you finally get to the coaches thing. So you get 4 steps to do the same thing.
Those leave something to be desired.
It's like somebody made it harder to use instead of easier to use.
That said, for the sake of the user group, after this month, I'll start using my Windows 11 box more and figuring out this little tips and secrets and bringing that in.
Okay. Anybody else have anything exciting that they've come across? Okay, we'll move right along. Open forum for questions and answers before we move along. Now, what I'm going to do, since nobody has any questions, normally we'd take a break right now, but what I want to do is go through the computer lexicons, then come back and take a break so we can set up for Lucinda to give her presentation. A podcast, the simplest thing on a podcast is an old radio show that is user generated. Anybody can make it. It's a radio show. And then you have video podcasts, which is your own TV station. So you can do, and there are podcasts on about every single subject you can think of and subjects you never even dreamed of. Okay, I am really into video podcasting or YouTube videos. I watch those almost all day long. When I'm driving is when I listen to podcasts. They get very upset if you sit and watch videos while you're driving for some strange reason. Now, the next term is blogging. What's the difference between a blog and a podcast? Well, I did actually get some. A blog is what we used to call a journal or a diary. However, a blog today can be written, like Barry's blog. It can be audio, which we also call a podcast, or you can have a vlog, which is a video blog, which is sometimes called a video podcast. But a blog and a podcast are not necessarily the same thing, maybe. And then what characterizes a vlog as opposed to a video podcast can generate all kinds of arguments. Okay, but a blog is.
There is a very simple technical distinction that I think is.
Oh, I'm researching this. I couldn't come up with anything. Go ahead.
For it to be a podcast or a video podcast, audio or video podcast, it is distributed through RSS. If it's distributed a different way, it's not really a podcast or a video podcast. Podcast specifically is an RSS distributed.
Now, what I find interesting is the term podcast. You know where that comes from?
Yeah, I forgot the
iPod.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, the original player Apple came up with was called the iPod. And then
it was a journalist that coined the phrase.
Yeah.
The term. I forgot when or where it was.
Oh, it was in very early days because they found out that you could do this using the RSS feed. You could distribute these recorded sessions.
And people were listening to it mainly on an iPod.
Yeah, because that was the instrument for listening to music and then podcasting. Now, one of the things we also hopefully get to is mail merge. Mail merge, very simply, is taking a list of things and putting it into a document and generating multiple documents. Primary example is a letter that you want to send out to, let's say I want to send a letter out to everyone in the user group. Well, I could write a number of letters and go in and change the names, the addresses, and all that nonsense. Or I could set up a base letter and grab the information out of my contacts and have the computer generate the letters. That capability exists in Microsoft Word and in Pages, and I'm going to be demonstrating the one in Pages today. And then a mail list. I'm going to be hopefully showing all of these today. It depends on how far we get. A mail list is a group of addresses, people that you can treat as one subject. Like, I have a mail list of the computer user group members. So when I address an email, I do not address it to each one of you individually. I type in the list and it automatically populates it. They're very easy to set up. They're a good way to organize your contacts so you can find stuff easily. But that's what a mail list is.
The mail list, what is the limitation of numbers that you can, without going to a CRM?
The number 1024 has been thrown around in the early days of contacts.
1,000?
1,024. I believe, now don't quote me on this, I believe that restriction was removed, and now there is no limit.
Over 1,000 people you can do on a list?
Yeah.
I've got one's got about 800 on it.
Wow. On just a desktop or on whatever.
Yeah. You have 800?
I'm not sure that there's really a limit unless it's...
Then why use a CRM?
I don't know why use the CRM. Yeah. If you're just using plain mailing contacts, there's no reason to use a CRM that I'm aware of. Can you think of anything, Barry? Now, some CRMs have features you may be looking for. Comes up to the next topic, bulk mailing. If you want to do bulk mailing, you need to use a CRM, which is a special program that has features. Bulk mailing is, there are programs out there that can generate bulk mailing, either through email or surface mail. You can do bulk mailing, actually not easily, on your computer. Bulk mailing takes the information out of your mail list, puts it into a mail merge, and sends it out.
And a lot of these bulk mailings are HTML mail, so it looks like a web page in your email client.
Yeah, like the junk mail that you get on your phone, those are bulk emails, where somebody, rather than typing in the email message to you, the program generates the email message using your contact information and sends it out, either electronically or Surface. That feature does not exist in either Outlook. I don't know if Outlook, they had it at one time, took it out. I don't know if it's come back in or not. And definitely in Apple Mail, you cannot do that. The closest you can come is using Mail Merge to generate the text and go and send that out one message at a time. What you can't do is use Mail Merge to generate email messages to send out.
Well, I'm still not getting the difference between a bulk mailing. So if I have 800 on my list, how does that not equal a bulk?
No, because, okay, but what you cannot do is create a mail message that's personalized. Bulk mailing does. The example you're using of mailing out to, that is a sample of primitive sample of bulk mailing. Very definitely. More sophisticated programs you can get on the web, you take your contact information and it will generate personal email messages. And you've seen them come into you where it says, especially the scammers, Dear John, I have captured all your information and I'm going to rob you of your bank account money, where they put in personal information, and that is a bulk email program.
Also, your email address will be in the to field.
Yeah.
Rather than undisclosed recipients.
Okay, so undisclosed recipients would
Right.
be a list.
Yes.
Versus. Okay.
Right. Okay. Oh, here's podcasting. I did do it. I just have. Okay. Jeez. See, my reviewers didn't do their job. Okay. I'm on a way to present and share information, homegrown radio or TV production. Anyone can produce. The trick is distribution. And that is the big thing. Well, yeah, I forgot about marketing. Getting money for doing your podcast. Unlike broadcast radio and TV, you control the schedule and content, which is huge. Because one thing I like about podcasts and video podcasts is I get to choose when I watch something. Broadcast TV, I've got to be someplace in order to watch it. I don't like that. I've gotten too used to being able to create my own environment. Also, you have special programs for finding and playing. You have Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Overcast, are just an example of podcast programs that are designed to go out and find podcasts and allow you to listen to them. And if you look at my Overcast, one of my feeds is Lucinda's podcast, along with about 30 others. What we're going to do right now is we're going to take our break.
I actually have a question. Could I still ask it?
Sure.
Okay, I did just look it up, and this is regarding how to transfer music from my computer onto my iPhone. I was trying to do it yesterday.
Yeah.
It's referring to iTunes in this one that I looked up, and iTunes isn't
Music.
but it doesn't say that on this.
So you don't do it through me. It's in the Finder now.
It's referencing file sharing.
The way you plug your iPhone into your computer, you go to the Finder, your phone shows up, and you just drag it on the phone.
No, it did not work.
That's not right.
It
Works for
was
me.
not correct.
I've had no.
I picked it up and put it on top of my phone, and my phone wouldn't light up as being seen by the music, so
Well, it's when you plug your phone in, did it show up in the Finder window?
it did.
And if you click on it, it should show you a whole bunch of.
It shows me what's in my iPhone, yes.
Yes.
But then I have to go back to my music to find the music that I want to drag into the phone. Historically, that's the way it was done.
Yeah.
That it did not work.
I don't use iTunes that way at all anymore. Barry, can you help her? Any other questions before we take our break? Okay, let's take about a 10-minute break. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Lucinda McGordon, who is a podcaster, a renowned podcaster who's got a really great show, and she's going to tell us all about the story of podcasting. It's all yours.
I do not consider myself an expert to start with. Let's see. My podcast is called Story Power, and I started it in July 22nd, 2020. I had been thinking about doing a podcast for a while, but when the pandemic hit and we were forced to stay home and I learned how to use Zoom, I was like, oh, I can do this. Yes. I wanted to do a podcast because the only podcast that I really listen to is What Should I Read Next with Ann Bogle. I've been listening to it for several years, and it's all about books, everything about books. Independent bookstore owners, people who do audio books. I mean, it's all about books. But I am a real lover of movies. I have a background in theater, so I like plays. I was teaching theater classes. I like TV. And I wanted to have an expanded podcasts to listen to about movies and television. And, well, I mean, I watch some videos and television and listen to some videos on YouTube about television and movies, but it was usually just one person talking about the movie and sometimes they were complaining about it, and I was like, I don't like that. I want to talk about, and since I have a theater background and I used to be an actor, I like to talk about the progression of the characters in the story. It started when I was a child and we had movie nights. My dad was dyslexic and my mom worked, and so they didn't really read books to us at night, but every week we'd have a night where we'd watch TV or movie, and then we'd talk about what happened to the characters and what the characters thought and what they learned through the story. And then eventually at the end, usually my dad would say, so what did you get out of the story? What's the message of the story? And so that led to my theater education and working as an actor and later a director and now teaching. Well, I don't teach anymore, but so I decided I needed to create my own podcast. It started off, the guests were my former students, they were people at the college, artists, or like I talked to a librarian, people who liked reading, people who were really interested in movies and television. And usually at the beginning, when I first started it, I would ask them, how did you get hooked on stories? And they would, and that's how we would start the podcast. And then they would talk about their favorite movies or their favorite books or their favorite television shows. And about a year into it, I talked to Cece Lewis, and one other woman. There were 3 women who started the Douglas Oral History Project. I don't know if you've heard of that, but they have people from Douglas come in, they videotape them, and they just tell their life story. A lot of them tell about how their family moved to Douglas from Mexico, or some of the stories are really amazing because they go back to when Pancho Villa was in the area, and they tell about, how there were battles in Douglas. And everybody said, oh, my life's not very interesting. Well, they are. And so that I changed my podcast just a little bit so that I was asking people to tell about a little bit about their life story too. And I was including more of that in my podcast. So also about a year in, I was running out of who was going to be a guest on my podcast. And I do not know how this happened, but I was contacted by email by, I can't remember his last name, but his first name is Alex. And he and his wife were starting a new service, which I call a dating service for podcasters. It's called Podmatch, and you can sign up as a host or a guest or both. And so it was free at that time. So I signed up and I started getting contacted because they match people up with you, either as a guest or a podcaster. And I was getting contacted by people who wanted to be on my podcast. Well, after a few months of that, I think it was about early or middle of 2022, I had so many recordings that I'm still working on those recordings. I was working about a year ahead. I have enough people now to take me through October of this year. So I had to hide my host profile because I was getting too many people. Because my podcast is only every other week. Now, when I first came to Barry and said, I want to do a podcast, didn't know what title it was going to be. I did know I wanted it to be about stories because I have a passion for stories. But he made me think about how often did I want to do the podcast? What format did I want it to be? Did I want it to be just me talking? Did I want to have multiple guests talking? Barry and I, when we travel, sometimes we listen to some of his podcasts, and it's always so confusing if there are 5 people talking on the podcast. That's just me, because I don't know, I don't have a face to put to the voice that's talking. So for me, it's just me and one other person usually. There have been times when my sister and her daughter, Ariel, will talk, but that's 3 people is enough. I don't do any more than that. So I decided, well, I was teaching at the time. I have a blog since 2013. I'm working on my second novel. I don't have time to do a podcast every week because I'm my only employee. So I have to record the podcasts. I edit the podcasts. I do all the show notes. I put it all up on WordPress, and I schedule it for the day that I want it to record, to post. So, but there were lots of steps that had to be done, and I'm not a technical person. So, since I already had a WordPress website, Barry helped me revamp the website. He's the one who helped me get the RSS feeds so that it would go to Apple, Google, and Spotify. And what else did you do, honey? What else did you help me with? Oh, yeah, he did my artwork, because you have to have a square artwork. If you've ever listened to podcasts, all the podcasts have a square artwork that identifies their podcast. So Barry did that for me. And then when we revamped my website, we have a link for the podcast, a link for my blog, a link for my books. Do we have any other links? I think that's all right now. So that was quite a process to revamp my website. And the reason I remembered that it was July 22nd, 2020 is because that's Ariel, my niece's Ariel's birthday. It was her 18th birthday. So this July 2nd, whatever week it is, 3rd week in July, will be my 3rd year of podcasting. And now I have been contacted not just by people at Podmatch, but I've had people find my blog or my podcast other ways and have contacted me and asked me to have them as a guest. Mostly it's authors who want me to do a podcast with them, because not only does my podcast go out to Apple, Google, and Spotify, but the show notes are available, and also WordPress only does Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So my podcast also goes out to those. There's a link where they can go to my website and listen to the podcast there. And then I manually post the link. Usually I only post the Apple link, but I will post it to Instagram, which means it goes back to Facebook again. Let's see. I have other social media outlets, but I need to get a way to link them all together, so I only have to post it once and then it populates all of those. We haven't got that far yet. When Barry retires, maybe we'll do that. So I have talked, because of Podmatch, I have talked to people from, this one makes me cry, Iran, a filmmaker from Iran. It makes me cry because I think he was really taking his life in his hands when he talked to me. Because I'm from the United States. That was a really interesting episode. I've talked to people from Scotland, from Australia, from the UK, from the Netherlands, Spain. Let's see. One of my former students is from Mexico, Mexico. Let's see. Of course, a lot of places in the United States. I've talked to musicians. Oh, one woman, even though she was born in Colorado, she lives in Paris. She's a visual artist. I've talked to visual artists, musicians, professional musicians, mostly authors, but other kinds of creative people too. So, it's been an adventure. Do you have questions?
Can you talk about Patreon?
Oh, right. Monetizing. I do not monetize my podcast. I discovered early on that you have to have a lot of listeners before you can get people to sponsor you or to, what do you call it? Yeah, buy ads for your podcast. I am not a person who just goes and pays attention to the stats. I don't go look at that. There are podcasters who look at that every time they post their podcast. I'm not like that. I got a nice little email from Spotify at the end of 2022 giving me kudos for continuing my podcast into 2.5 years, and that I had grown my podcast by this much. And it was like, oh, that was a really nice little email, because I never checked those. And that most creators, people like me who are artistic or, people, most of them are like business related or political related. Those kinds of podcasts are really, really popular. My kind of podcast, a lot of those podcasters quit podcasting. I think maybe it's because they get discouraged because not a lot of people are listening, although Ann Bogle has a bunch of listeners. But she's been doing it since 2013, I think, so she's been doing it a long time. She's the one who gave me the idea about Patreon. Patreon is like that old idea of having a patron for the artist. Except the patrons on Patreon are only paying $5 a month or $10 a month or, something like that. So I don't have very many patrons. I only have 3. But, I do post things specifically just for them. And then a week or 2 later, I will populate it to my social media and invite people to come join in the conversation. I have started doing special just for Patreon recordings with some of my past Patreon podcast guests, and a lot of them are artists or authors, so I want to help them sell their books, so I populate that to my social media as well. Another way you can monetize is, I think, we have not investigated this yet, but I have received emails from Apple where you can have subscribers. So it's sort of like Patreon. You can get people to pay a little money to get extra content on Apple podcasts.
Sorry, I don't understand extra content.
Oh, that means I would have special content for all my subscribers that isn't separate. It's only the Apple subscribe. So like only the podcast, only Patreon, there's the special things that I do just for Patreon patrons. So we haven't investigated that yet. I probably will start getting, if I ever get 50,000 people listening to my podcast, which I can't really imagine that. I have no idea. I don't pay attention to that. I have no idea how many I have. Spotify told me, but I forgot what it is. I don't pay attention to Google at all. But Apple and Spotify I pay attention to a little bit. Then I might get people saying, oh, we want you to advertise about this clothing line or this line of books or this bookstore. I might get those kinds of emails once I have a lot of people following my podcast. So, yeah. Oh, thank you for saying that. Just a minute. When we got locked down at the college and we had to teach from home, I learned how to use Zoom. So now Barry and I last summer did investigate other options, but I already knew how to use Zoom. Some of the other options were more expensive. For me to subscribe to have Zoom so that I can just have however unlimited minutes I wanted for my conversation, it's like $25 or something a month equivalent. So it was very inexpensive. I already knew how to use it. There are other platforms that you can use to record. And that some of them have really fancy features. I'm not a fancy feature kind of a person. As you can tell, I'm not even wearing any makeup. And that's partly why I do not do a video YouTube podcast. I am starting to convert my recordings, but I'm just doing a picture of me when I'm talking and a picture of my guest when they're talking. It's not really the video. So far I only have the first one done because it takes a long time to do that. The editing, I started editing through GarageBand because I already knew how to use it a little bit. And so I take the audio from Zoom, put it into GarageBand, and then I edit it. Because sometimes people will say things and they'll go, oh, I don't want that in the podcast. So I'll have to take that out. I take out some of the ums and ahs if it's, because some people do that a lot. I leave some in, but I don't leave them all in, usually. I edited extensively when I first started, and now I'm a lot more relaxed about it. GarageBand. There are lots of other, what do you say?
Audacity is the one that I use.
Audacity, yeah. I think we did investigate Audacity, but I already kind of knew how to use GarageBand, so that's why I use GarageBand. Some people do not. The person that is going to be my guest this coming Wednesday, his name is Max Ivy, and he calls himself the blind blogger because he has an eye thing that his eyesight went progressively. Now he's pretty much blind. But he does a podcast called What's Your Excuse? Because he has done all kinds of things, even being blind, and he doesn't edit. Well, he can't see the screen, for one thing, to edit. I'm sure there are aids to that, but he also has a service where he helps people with disabilities like his to start a podcast. So he helps people. I had a friend when I first started writing my first novel who said, your first draft is going to be crap and you just have to leave it that way and then improve it as you revise. And Max and I were talking about that, and he said, when you first start your podcast, he didn't say it was going to be crap, but he says you just have to let it have its flaws, because as you go along, you learn more about how to do it. So don't let the flaws stop you if you want to start a podcast. And that's the way it is with my blog, too. Yeah.
Yeah, question on that editing. When you record on Zoom, you create those three files, your audio, the video, and the content.
Right.
So if you're just editing the audio, what does it do for the compiled file?
It just leaves it in the Zoom file.
You're pulling it out of the Zoom file, so that in the end, you have a Zoom file that's original, and then you have a file in GarageBand that has been edited.
Right. Actually,
What do you call that?
GarageBand is a Mac product.
Oh, yeah, it's an Apple.
I keep a file for each person. So I have their release form, I have a photo for them, I have their bio, I have their raw audio file, and then once I edit in GarageBand, then I send it through this other thing called Levelator, where it levels because sometimes the audio on their side or the audio on my side are unequal. So Barry's the one who helped me learn how to use that. It's actually really easy. You just drag the file over. And then Barry converts it, because something happened sometime back where I was unable to upload the audio file the way we had been doing it to WordPress. I think it was something on WordPress's side that made it really difficult. So then Barry converts it to a file where I can put it on my iPad, upload it to media for WordPress, and then I can just take it when I'm on our laptop. I can just take it out of media and stick it into the show notes. So in my show notes, what I do is I have my artwork for the podcast, then I have the bio of the person and with their picture at the bottom, and then I have the podcast recording, and underneath that I have all of the things we talked about where I can put links. So like if they're an author, I have their website, their social media links, the books that they've written, then any other stories that we've talked about, or sometimes locations that we've talked about that were in the. So I had when I talked to the guy from Iran, my show notes were really long. And a lot of times that's the way it is. I have long show notes, but I try to put as many links in there as I can, because that helps also attract people to your podcast. Because if they're looking for a specific thing, sometimes my podcast will show up in the Google list because I link it. I also put it in the tags. I put those things in the tags. Like one person that I talked to, he's an author. He does other things as well, but he loves Stephen King. So in the tags, I will put Stephen King because he loves Stephen King, and he kind of modeled his novel a little bit on Stephen King. And I will put the name of their book if they wrote a book, or if they are an artist, like the woman in Paris had shows coming up, so I put links for the shows that she had coming up. She also had this really interesting physical thing where one of her breasts did not develop. There's a special name for it, which I cannot remember. And so some of her artwork is all about her journey of, do I put an implant in there so that I look balanced? She went through this whole thing about this physical disability. And so she has this whole line of artwork about that. So I put the name of her physical disability in there, in the tags. Let's see, what other...
So it's kind of like a contents. Your links are helping people to move through the contents of your podcast.
Right, exactly. And if they want, like if they hear us talk about a movie or a book or an art show or a concert where a musician is playing, they can click on the link and then they can go get more information. Right.
Can you talk to, okay, you made the recording.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get that recording out to everybody?
Thank you.
I think it's my turn.
I think it's Barry's turn to talk about the RSS feed. I'm not done. Well, I don't think I'm done. Am I done?
No.
Oh, okay.
You're done when you say
Well, we have to be done at noon, right? What time is it?
10:40.
10:36. Here. Should I put you in the...
Up there?
I can't move it. I thought it was swiveling.
No, it doesn't have a swivel like yours.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is about a little bit about how podcasts work then. Let's see.
Do I have to do something? Accept it?
Yeah.
Score, accept.
So I just threw this little flow chart together here. Let me see if I can. So the question was about you. After you get the audio file, what happens there? What happens? How do you get it distributed? Is that right?
Yes.
The question? Okay. So she's recorded with Zoom. She's downloaded the audio file from Zoom, made her edits, and so she's got a final audio file. Now, the way podcasts work and why podcast is different than just a radio broadcast is that the podcast contents can be subscribed to. And that's facilitated by a web technology that's, decades old now probably, called RSS, which stands for Really Simple Syndication or Subscription or something like that. Yeah. So once you have an audio file, it has to be you have to then upload that audio file to a web server, a host for that file that will generate an RSS feed. Now in Lucinda's case, that's her WordPress blog. So WordPress does have a facility to host media and podcasts specifically. So
Is that something when you establish the account, you have to tell me you're doing?
you can do it after the fact. You can add it on.
So is it an app you can put in?
No, it's not an extra app. I mean,
There's a categories thing. When I do my blog, I just put uncategory or whatever it is, no category. But when I do my podcast, I click the little podcast box so
Yeah.
that it goes to the RSS feed.
right.
That's all you have to do, is just one button.
She set up, you set up the category, on your web pages in WordPress, and when you set up a podcast category, they set up the RSS URL feed for that. So when you make, it's basically, she just makes another blog post, but she categorizes it as a podcast, and that puts it into the RSS feed for her.
Okay.
Now, other hosts would work differently. I mean, this is specifically WordPress, and she's paying, and there's a limit in terms of online storage. So when she has enough episodes that she's gotten, to the limit of either that she's paying for, if she doesn't want to pay more to WordPress, which that might be the easiest thing to do. There are other hosts out there too that will just host the media and create the RSS feed.
For example, could that be YouTube?
YouTube, I'm not sure that, when you subscribe as a user to a YouTube video, I don't know if that uses RSS or not. I think it's all contained in YouTube. You can subscribe and you can get notifications like RSS does that as well, but I think YouTube has got its own formula. It's got its own back end, so it's a little bit different.
And speaking of getting paid, you can get donations on YouTube videos. So I have not done that yet because I don't have enough on there. But there is a way to get donations.
You have to have a certain amount of users or
I don't know that yet.
I think so.
members?
Or subscribers.
Probably you do.
I think you have to have 1,000.
And YouTube also has its own monetizing through advertising on your content that you can either
You can do or you
opt out
don't.
or opt into.
Yeah.
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 Is there a listing of available hosts for podcasts somewhere?
I think if you just do a web search for podcast hosting, you'll get a bunch. One that I know that I am aware of is, I was erasing. There's one that's called Libsyn that I've heard of. A lot of podcasters, a lot of tech podcasters that I listen to use Libsyn. Libsyn.com.
There's Anchor,
There's another service called Anchor.
which is linked to WordPress.
Oh yeah, you can link any RSS feed back to your blog.
What?
Buzzsprout.
Buzzsprout. There's a
Yeah.
Podbean.
The City of Sierra Vista's podcast is hosted through Podbean.
Libsyn, Blueberry.
I just checked out YouTube. You have to have at least 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours in the past year.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same. It's kind of the same if you want people to give you ads for your. Yeah.
So once you have a host and an RSS feed, and the RSS feed has its own unique URL, like any web page does. But anybody that subscribes to that URL can get the content as it's added and updated. So any new content you put into that feed, if someone subscribed to it, they'll get a notification or they can get the latest content. It's not a static web page, in other words. So that URL then you give to podcast directories, which allow your podcast to be found by people.
Where are those located?
The big three are Apple, Google, and Spotify. So if you are an Apple device user, you have an Apple ID already, you can use that same Apple ID to create an account at Apple as a creator. There's a specific Apple URL. I think it used to be called iTunes Connect. I'm not sure if they still call it that, but Connect is in the name anyway. And you create an account using your Apple ID, and then you provide your artwork and the RSS feed and a description, a general description of your podcast, and then submit it. They review it, and when it's approved by Apple to be put into their podcast directory, it's available to any podcast app that uses Apple's directory to find things. And of course, Apple's podcast app is one of those. Amazon has their own as well.
I just got contacted by them
Yeah.
to put my podcast on Amazon, which we haven't done yet, but we will.
So Google and Spotify are very similar. Like if you already have a Gmail account or a Google, online account, you can use the same, account to set up a similar kind of thing that Apple has. I don't know what it's called now. I can't remember. And then Spotify, you just create a Spotify account and say you want to be a creator, you want to add podcasts to their directory, and you submit it, and all of them, they go through an approval process of some kind, and then it's listed there. And they don't host anything, but you can find the podcast then through their own podcast apps. All of them have their own apps. So it would be the Spotify app, the Amazon Music app, I think is where their podcasts come in, and Apple's podcast app, and Google has its own podcast app. And then there are also third-party podcast apps that you can find in your respective stores, like either the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for Apple iPhone and iPads, that you can search in, and these third-party apps, they use these main directories to, they can link up to those main directories that you've put your RSS feed into to find content to subscribe to. So the one that I use, and John has mentioned it already, is Overcast. And there's another app called, I think it's called Downcast. And there's lots of other third-party apps. So these third-party apps, they go to the directory to get the RSS feed to feed to their users.
Podchaser's the one that I'm going to sign up for.
Podchaser? Is that another directory?
It's another third party. Podchaser.
It's just
Just another third party podcast.
it's just an app.
I think so.
Then you wouldn't have to. I'm not sure you'd have to sign up with them then.
There's a bunch.
There's a bunch.
There are a bunch.
So that's kind of a brief behind-the-scenes look, I guess, of how that whole system works. So if it's not RSS based, then the technical definition is that it's not really a podcast, even though somebody may call it a podcast. Yes.
One question for each of you separate.
Probably not. I did after, let's see, we started the podcast in July of 2020. In December of 2020, I added music and an intro outro with my voice. I might have started that earlier, but I didn't know how to do that right away. But when Barry was home for Christmas, he showed me how to use the loops in GarageBand, because GarageBand is for musicians mostly. And so I took some loops and created a little bit of music and also some percussion, and that plays underneath my voiceover for intro and outro. And I might have started using that, but other than that, no.
One thing to note is when GarageBand first came out, it had a module for podcasting.
Yeah.
And it disappeared.
And it disappeared.
Yeah. Oh, that is one thing that I do when I create a new file, is I select just the audio, and then I go and select in the voice. There's a voice thing, and I go down and I select natural voice or natural. Yeah. There's narrator voice. There are a bunch of them, but I just use natural voice
Barry,
for that.
Since you're the techie behind the scenes, what would you have done different?
Retired earlier, so I had more time to help her.
Oh, really?
I think this is. I'm not sure that I would do anything differently than what we have done so far. I'm not on the screen. Okay.
No, I'm fixing it.
I think going forward, though, there are some things, I would like to be able to advance and make, the quality better for her.
Such as?
A better microphone,
Oh, yeah, I just have a headset with a little mic.
maybe getting, like John has here for recording himself for the video of, when we post this on YouTube, having a dedicated microphone that's better suited for, voice recording. I think at some point, we may want to move past Zoom, because when the audio file from Zoom is just a combined tracks. So it's just one audio track. It's not stereo, which doesn't need to be for just voice. It's just a voice conversation. I think, there are ways of doing podcast recordings with guests, even remotely, where there are separate recordings where, like, the guest is doing a recording on their end as well. And so you have two high-quality audio files. The guest has to be able to send it to you, then to combine into an audio editing program, so that you have separate tracks for each person that way, and you can make more refinements to the sound quality easier for one individual over the other as you're editing. So.
And also, we have a terrible internet. So probably upgrading our internet is something that we would like to do, because, if I'm talking to somebody in Australia or wherever, it just down the road, because I did have a guest who just lives down the road from us, and we're having terrible internet that day. It just cuts out, and it makes the sound not very good.
So if T-Mobile doesn't come through with their home 5G internet service in our area, we may have to end up paying our ISP more per month to get faster speeds.
Yes. Now, I'm going to go back to your question about funding. I've just recently realized or discovered that there are grants, artistic grants, for people like me who are creating content. And so I haven't done a lot of investigating about that, but I am going to maybe look into getting a grant so that I can pay him as my assistant. I can get a new computer, because my desktop computer died and I'm using Miranda, the laptop. I can get new equipment, like a new, all the things that I would like, pay for all my subscriptions that I have to produce the podcast, like Zoom, Podmatch, all the other subscriptions, and then that's not such a strain.
Please keep me posted on that one.
Okay.
I'd be curious to know if the Small Business Administration might have women's small business, oriented grants or.
Oh yeah, they probably do.
knowledge and information.
Every time I go there, though, they talk business speak, and that goes.
I have to make an appointment to see Mark.
I'm like,
I can get him to talk to me.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
My main point was, I just brought up the small business admin, but women's grants for women's small businesses or artists, women artists.
Right.
Women would be a key.
Yeah, Arizona every state has artistic organizations that give grants. And someone who belonged to that at one point said, every year we have all this money that we did not get to give away because people didn't know that there were these grants available. So that's one thing that maybe I'm going to investigate. There's a woman at the college that I interviewed. She's the department chair for arts and humanities, and she has written grants, a lot of grants, for things for the college, for herself and for things for the college. So I'm going to contact her and ask her for some help too. Yeah.
Have you tried the small business down at the college, head office?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark Schmidt. Yeah.
The other question I have, it's not a question, it's a comment. Try Microsoft Teams rather than Zoom.
Or
Okay.
Skype, maybe.
Skype is-
I've heard a lot of people use Skype for podcast recording.
Team is so much better.
Okay.
There's another one too that starts with an S. I can't remember. The guy from UK used it.
Because we used Team, when I was working, to do exactly what you're doing. But we'd have like 15 people,
Yeah,
and Team worked like a champ.
I only need 2.
Was iffy.
Yeah.
Do both ends have to have it?
No, well, for those who do not own Microsoft Office, there's a website, go in with the code and join the Team site.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to investigate that. It's just that I knew how to use Zoom already, and I didn't want to wait a whole long time to investigate all these. Plus, it was also inexpensive. It was, since we're paying for everything ourselves, it was also inexpensive.
Well, you have a Microsoft Office account, right?
Yeah, we do, yeah.
Team is free.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if we,
One
if
less
that
subscription.
works out, then we could switch
One
and
less.
drop the Zoom subscription.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Another question back here, Robert.
Yeah, what just came to mind, what's the funnest part of this bid for you? Obviously.
Oh, meeting the people and hearing their stories. Oh, yeah, that's the most fun. And also, I started to do this sometime last year. I've talked to so many authors. I decided, because sometimes when I set up the meeting with them, I don't have time to read their book before I talk to them. So I've started reading their books. There's a woman from Australia that I interviewed. I don't even think her episode has aired yet. She wrote a book about it. She's what was the Holocaust in Turkey?
The Armenian?
The Armenian Holocaust. Yeah, she's Armenian descent. And so she wrote this book about the terrorists, the Armenian terrorists, and it's from their point of view. The book is from their point of view. I have to read that one. It sounds so interesting. Then I had three Jewish authors in a row who have written books that I read their books, and they were all really interesting because a lot of them took place in Israel. And I learned so much about the Israeli culture and how everybody has to go into the army and the different factions of Judaism. And in one book, that book is called The Deathly Scrolls. It's about the murder of a Dead Sea Scroll scholar. That's how it starts off. And they're at a conference in Jerusalem. And so this woman, who's sort of like an FBI agent, except she's Israeli agent, has to investigate that. And it's all about how the right-wing Christians have moved into Jerusalem, and they're causing so many problems, which there are already problems between the Jews and the Muslims. Palestinians, Muslims. So they were just causing all kinds of problems. That was really interesting, and now she has a second book. So I've had her and the other guy that wrote The Resurrector on my Patreon to talk about their books, just for my patrons. So, and then about a week or two later, I will use that recording to try to get more patrons. It's a lot of work to get people to follow. If you want to continually put stuff out on social media, I've had to learn how to do that because I didn't know anything about marketing and promotion. So I've started to create little memes about stories. I found it's called Memetic or something like that. I forgot what it's called.
An app.
It's an app that helps you create memes. I also do little videos because I don't know what I was thinking. When I retired, I created a course for Udemy called Saving the World One Story at a Time, and I tell people how to analyze stories and use them to help you communicate better, understand humans better, how to increase your empathy and compassion by reading body language and thinking about why is this character doing what they're doing, thinking behind what happened to them in the past. It's all actor stuff. But so when I created that, I started creating little videos to put up on social media as well. So some of those probably will. I did create I'm not sure I ever aired that, but I create in Garage. Was it in GarageBand? No, it was in iMovie. I created a trailer for Story Power. I'm not sure I've ever used it. But yeah, so all those little kinds of things you can keep putting up on your social media outlets. I have social media outlets that I don't use very much, and I'm gonna have to start posting more things up on them. Like Alignable. Somebody signed me up for Alignable. I didn't sign myself up. I haven't even
heard of that.
Yeah. She invited me and I said, oh, sure. And then I was signed up for Alignable. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I just wanted to connect with you. And then I get from Alignable, oh, you signed up for this group. No, I didn't sign up for that group. You signed me up for the group. But there are a lot of people who use Alignable, so I'm going to have to start posting there too. That's another thing that Barry and I need to do is there are services where you can post something once and it goes out to all your social media outlets. So that's another thing that we have to do is figure that out. So there are streamline it, right. There are lots of little things that are left undone that we have to. I did put my podcast information up on Internet Movie Database. I interviewed this guy who was an executive at MTV when it first started, and he told me about that. And so I have to go amend it because he can be one of my guests, and if somebody looks him up, then it says, oh, he was on Story Power. I did get it up on Internet Movie Database. I just have to go do some editing. But that's not a feed. It just gives you information. Like, you know, if you watch a movie, you can, or a television show, you can go get a bunch of information. Who directed it? Who's the producer?
Yeah, and I didn't know they had a podcast category.
Yeah.
Until they.
Well, it's just new. That's new. Yeah. The podcast. There are a bunch of things that we need to. When Barry retires, we'll.
Yeah. Which I hope will be soon.
Any more questions? Do you have an Apple phone or iPad? There should be a podcast app. It looks like a microphone with a. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got purple.
Yeah,
artwork.
if you click on that, there's a search, and you search for Story-Power, and it should come up with my artwork, which we'll come over and help you find it.
You would need, if you have like an Android phone, you could listen to it at her website.
That's what I said. What is your website?
Sage Woman Chronicles is the name of my website. Sage Woman Chronicles.
And the URL is just
sagewoman.life.
Yeah, sagewoman.life.
What's the difference between Sage Woman Chronicles and Sage Woman.life?
That's
the sagewoman.life is the URL to get to my website.
if you just do an internet search for Sage Woman Chronicles, you'll probably find it. But sagewoman.life is the actual.
Yeah, if you put my name, Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, one of my friends said, oh, I just typed in your name into Google and all these things came up. Yeah. It was like, really?
Right.
Oh, okay. That's another thing I'm probably going to do is form an LLC so that all of my little endeavors, my course, my books, everything are under one blanket.
Umbrella.
Yeah.
So I'm new to the word memes, but I think I know what they are.
You've seen them.
How do you use them?
How do I use them? I get a picture, usually, and then I put a quote, and then the memetic or whatever it is creates it, and it puts it into my photo library. And then so when I am on Facebook or Instagram or something, LinkedIn, I can just go to my photo library, pick the meme I want, and upload it. Yeah.
So social media marketing.
It's a social media marketing thing, yeah. And I have I'm probably going to go get some more quotes to create them. I create them on my iPad. I don't think you can create, I think that's an iPad or a phone thing. I don't think you can create those. I don't think Memetic works on
You could do it
the
through Canva.
laptop. Oh yeah, I'm sure there are a whole bunch.
Canva's just another free
Yeah.
tool like that.
Right.
Adobe
This one-
Express.
Yeah, this one was free too. It's just the one I liked the best. At the App Store, I went and searched for meme creation or whatever.
And so meme would have to do with the size of it, is that right? Or would it be according to?
It's kind of a category of sharing, I think, or whatever.
Okay, so are memes a certain length, a video?
Oh, a
Like
video's, I don't think a video is called a meme.
Yes, it is,
It is?
yeah.
It can
It's-
be. It
it's
could be an
because
animated
of
GIF. But
Oh, that,
Video, piece of text, typically humorous, that is copied and spread to market.
yeah. I just, when I do my videos, again, it's in Photos. I go get it. I use my phone to make the video. That's how I did it for my course too. All my video content, I used my phone. It's on Udemy. That course is on Udemy. Yeah, then I try to keep them really short. The
What does
one,
that mean?
huh?
What does really short mean to you?
About not more than 5 minutes. In Udemy, the course in Udemy, each lesson's around 15 minutes. But you could do the whole course in one day because it's only like 4.5 hours or 5 hours, all the video content. Plus I have more videos to add to that. But yeah, so another thing that I do to market my course is I have some trailers that I will put up on my social media every once in a while. It's difficult to keep all my balls in the air, so I don't do that as often as I should probably. But I'm trying to finish my second book.
It's more fun the way you're.
just do it when you
Yeah,
do
do
it.
what
Yeah.
fits the most.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I guess it doesn't really matter to me if it is a slow.
You're not trying to build a business and.
Right.
building
Well,
a
I mean,
business to-
I will get paid for the course, and I do get paid for Patreon. And we are
It'd
thinking
be
of,
nice if the
became a
costs
business
were
that paid
offset.
for itself.
yeah. A little bit of income would be nice. But then if I get the grant, I don't need to worry about that. At least not for a while.
Okay, we're going to
Yeah.
pick up now that we've talked about podcasts, and we can continue our discussion in mail lists, which we've pretty much already covered. Except, and I'm just going to go ahead, you don't have to ask the question because I'm going to address it. At the break, I was asked a question about commercial mail lists. And you've probably, you go on a website and would you like to get our newsletter, to subscribe to our newsletter? What you're doing is actually going and being added to a mail list on commercial software. And the commercial ones allow you to subscribe and unsubscribe. Now, I'm sure that many of you have noticed that when you go to unsubscribe, and you'll see that come up in the mail message, unsubscribe, that yes, you stop getting that particular mail list or mailing. But all of a sudden you're getting ones that you've never signed up for. Or you start to get mail lists that you have no idea how you got it. So let me explain to you what's going on. First, we're going to address when you go to a site and say, yes, I want to be on your mail list. You go in, you give them your email address, and that is added to a mail list. And when they go out to give it mailing, it generates the email message. It actually creates the email message and sends it out to you. That's one way of doing it. The second way is called using spiders. And what spiders do is they go out and hunt for email addresses. And they can find them in all kinds of strange places. Let's say that I have a mail list and I send a bunch of email addresses in my email to Barry. Barry sits and forwards that, leaving all the addresses in it to somebody else, who forwards it to somebody else. All of a sudden now I have an email message that has a couple of hundred email addresses in it. Well, these spiders are lurking on different relay hosts, and they'll spot this and, oh, here's a message that has a whole bunch of email addresses. I'm going to snatch those out and add them to my list, and then send out the mailings to you. That's the unscrupulous way of doing it. It does happen. Here's the fun part. You go to unsubscribe. You'll find this happening mainly on email lists that you have not subscribed to. You say, no, I don't want that. Unsubscribe. Well, it goes back to the host. The host says, okay, I'll take you off of that email list. However, I now know that is a valid email address, so I'm going to put it in this stack of email addresses that I sell to people as being valid email addresses. So you are now added to any number of email lists that you never wanted to get. How do you stop this? Not easily. The best way to do it is if you get email messages that come in that you never subscribe to, those are ones that in particular, don't respond to an unsubscribe. Leave it alone. Now, if you get mail in where you have subscribed, those are safe to unsubscribe to. It's the ones that you did not ask for. Yes. Now, understand this is not 100% foolproof because a lot of companies collect valid email addresses and sell them. So if you unsubscribe from that scenario, that will not take you off of the list they've sold people. And valid email addresses get big bucks. People pay a lot of money for it. Now, what we're going to do is we talked about mail merge. I have a video, and this is where we're going to end today's discussion. We're going to take a look at this video on how to do mail merge in Pages, discuss that topic, and they'll end up right there. Any questions on mail lists?
In this video, we're going to be talking about one of the new features that's been added to Pages. That's called mail merge. Now, mail merge has been available in Word for quite some time, but it's just been re-added to Pages because they took it out after a while, and now they've put it back in. So I've created a dummy document right here that we're going to be using. It could be a holiday letter, it could be anything, mail labels, envelopes that we want to send to a number of different people and have the information change and generate different letters for different people. So the first thing we do is go up to Documents, and inside Documents, down at the bottom, you'll see this button down here called Mail Merge. So we're going to click on Mail Merge. Now, what this does is we're going to be creating fields that we want to be filled automatically. So we go to Add Merge Field, and we're going to be picking up, we can either do it from a spreadsheet, but I find that to be actually, unless you have a lot of different fields, we're just going to do it right here from this, which pulls it out of your contacts. So we're going to say full name, and in this case, this is the header. I want it to be the sender's name, which is mine. And then we'll come down and we're going to add another field, and we're going to put down here my home address, and it's the sender. And then I want to add my email address, and make sure email address is sender. Senders are in green. The recipients is in blue. And I'm going to add a line down here, and we're going to put in my phone number and make that sender. Now I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to add in the recipient's information, and I want their full name, and then come down and add their home address, and come down and we'll put in there. And I'm showing you something here that these fields I can just put on new lines very easily. And then on the dear line, I want to use just their first name, so I'm going to come in here and add a field, say, dear, whatever the name is, and add in a comma after that. And then down here, I want to make it a little personal. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put in my first name, just like that. Now that we're done with this, now what this is going to do, it's going to go into my contacts application and draw out information from there based upon a list I've created. And the sender's information, that's me, is going to come from the card I have marked in contacts as being me. So I hit the merge button, and I have a short list here, MVCUG officers. I'm choosing that one because it's short. And it shows where it's pulling the stuff out of. This is the merge field, and I'm populating with this information. And I can go and change, and specify. If it doesn't come up with the field I want, I can go in and change this, but we'll take a look and see. And it's going to substitute the closest match. So I'm going to preview it. And it didn't pick up my phone number right. So I'm going to go in here, and on phone number, I'm going to come down here, more fields under phone, pick up my iPhone number, preview it. Yep, everything's right. So I'm going to close it, hit merge, and now I have all these letters that have been generated with that information in it. And it's that simple to produce. So you can see how a merge letter has been done in Pages. And remember, you can do this with mail labels, you can do this with envelopes, you can do it with letters, and anything that you want. What you cannot do is have it automatically generate email messages. Now, what you can do is generate the message here and then copy paste it into separate messages and email. Hopefully someday they'll fix that. So there you go. Merge in pages.
Okay, now, some of you I know are saying, but John, sender info, which is me, why are you just not putting that in? Because it's going to repeat on every page. Why are you setting up as a merge field? Very easy explanation for that. Because I can go in, I can create one template. I can go in and change the contact as my contact. So if I wanted to send it from Barry, I would just go and bring up his card and contacts, say, now use Barry as my contact. It would make the change, and then it would generate the header information would become Barry instead of me. That's why you would do it that way. If you have header information or the sender will change, then you go in and use the merge fields that way, and that way you can have a template and serve a whole bunch of different purposes. Barry, okay, any other questions? Sir?
I also noticed that it had, for the sender, and you chose like full address, right?
Yeah.
With the mail merge. It had United States, but it didn't on the, for the recipients.
Mm-hmm.
So is that just a fact that your contact has that field filled in and the other ones don't, do you think? Or,
Don't know.
so if you didn't want, because I noticed when I add contacts, new contacts to contacts, at least on the Mac, when I do it on the Mac, it defaults, fills it in with the United States.
I don't know if that is a settings switch. I don't know yet, because I noticed that too.
If you went through and just did individual parts of the address instead of full address, you could just, if you did fields for like street and city and state and zip separately, it may not use that.
Maybe, I don't know. I haven't gone that far into it. Any other questions? I'm going to skip over. Okay, questions and discussion. Any questions or discussions? Comments?